All right, here we are after a very long absence from, well, not the airwaves, from the podcast waves. We're going to have another go at our aviation podcast, our New Zealand aviation podcast, after all this time. It's like I woke up, Martin, and you'd gone. What happened?
I was gone, yeah. I've been in Australia since June, July last year.
Wow. Okay, well, many people have been, every now and then making comments about the absence of this podcast for so long and suggesting that we should start it up again, which is cool, but we've got lives and day jobs, right? So it's been a little bit difficult, but I think we'll give it a go. And now there are other sites that we can put it on that people can donate to, Martin.
Yeah.
And that interests me.
Yeah. See how that goes.
Anyway, you've been over in Australia and spending a bit of time, I think, in Western Australia and hanging around Perth Airport.
I have.
I've been there before. It's quite a nice airport to watch the traffic. Anything?
And I'm working right at the end of the short runway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What have you been seeing there?
A lot of 787-900s.
Right. From who?
Scoot.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Air New Zealand. Some 800s from Thai.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're coming and going. Singapore put its A350-900 into Perth the other day.
Nice.
And they're going to be doing that regularly soon, as is Cathay Pacific.
Oh, okay. It's becoming a bit of a go-to plane, that in this part of the world, that part of the world.
Well, I had to go to Taiwan a couple of weeks back from Perth, and I was flying Cathay, and imagine my delight when I got my boarding pass for the Hong Kong to Taipei leg, and I was going to be flying on an A350-900.
Oh, and you did?
No, imagine my dismay when I got there and they were towing the A350-900 away, and it got replaced 40 minutes later with a ropey old A330-300.
Ah, something wrong with it?
I don't know.
Techo, gone tech.
Or they decided to use it on another leg or whatever. But
well,
yeah,
they saw your name on the
they must have. I wasn't happy.
This is too good for him.
Yeah.
All right, and also we were talking, you mentioned that you witnessed or quite unusual A380 activity at Perth. Tell us about that.
It was real windy, gusting 40-45 knots according to AeroWeather.
Right.
And it was coming on the long runway from over the sea, and at about, I'd say, 50-75 meters up, while it was pointing quite badly in the wrong direction, it initiated a go-round.
Right.
And then 30 minutes later, I roared back to work because I had an inkling of what was going to happen. It came in on the short runway.
And that's sort of like the cross one, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it depends on your orientation. For me, it's not, but yeah. And yeah, it came in, and then next day in the newspapers they were saying, a lot of people had said it could never land on that, and blah blah blah. But absolutely no problem.
They have a ridiculously low landing speed, don't they? Like 135 or 40 knots or something?
This thing wafted in straight into the wind like a balloon, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it floated a bit, landed, and probably used about 2/3 of the runway.
In fact, speaking of Emirates, I see they've cut back flights, just jumping to something else, to the US by 20%, citing the travel ban of Trump.
Yeah.
Anyway, you get that.
So now you've got to put all your lithium-ion batteries in the hold, which they were telling you was something you couldn't do earlier.
Oh.
Yeah. So now you're not allowed to take a laptop or anything bigger than a mobile phone with you in the cabin. So they're telling you to check it.
Right.
But not long ago, the Americans are saying, no, you can't check laptops and laptop batteries because it's a danger in the hold.
Oh, okay. So what's changed there?
Protectionism.
Okay.
I suspect.
Well, does that mean it was never really an issue in the first place?
Well, 2 years ago you weren't allowed to use Bluetooth or any transmitting device on the plane. Now most people don't even turn their phones off.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I can't quite remember where we left off, but it was a while ago. So there's been plenty of activity. I don't know where you want to start. Well, should we start with what I'm doing?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, you've been real busy.
All right. Well, remember, I think in earlier podcasts, before we sort of hung up the headphones for a while, I made vague mentions about trying to track down an aircraft. I think there was a 737, an old NAC, our domestic airline from the 60s and 70s. Well, even back before that, but finished in the 70s. Air New Zealand absorbed it. There was one left from the original airlines order of the 60s, and we were sort of trying to track that down. Well, that's grown, Martin. Substantially grown. And we've since found that there are 5 ex Kiwi airliners, Teal, Air New Zealand, NAC airliners out there. There's the 737 NAD, the second one delivered in 68, but also there's one of the Electras, the only one left. TEB was the registration of that when it was delivered in 59.
That's still flying, isn't it?
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
It's the oldest one. It's the only airworthy one. That's in Canada, Buffalo Airways, the ice pilots people, right?
Yeah,
They've got that.
Yeah.
Also, the last Teal/Air New Zealand DC-8, part of the first order, because there were, I think, two orders, two tranches. The first one, NZA, followed by NZB. That crashed.
Okay.
It crashed at Auckland during a training flight, only a month or two old. You know, it was a bit sad. And people can look up the details on that. I think it had something to do with the engine, or one of the engines, going into reverse during a touch and go. Pretty sure. Anyway, and NZC, delivered in 68. Well, we found NZC.
Where's that?
It's at Manaus Airport, Brazil.
Okay.
On the edge of the jungle. It's been derelict there since 2004. Operated as a freighter up until that point, which you don't quite know really what that means in that part of the world.
Yeah.
If it was a legit business or not. But anyway, it's still remarkably still intact. Not looking very good, mind you, but you know how things can be done up. So we're on to that one. It also turns out that one of the only remaining Air New Zealand DC-10, which was delivered in 76 as NZS, that's at Havana, Cuba. And that last operated with Air Liberté. Anyway, inclusive tour operator, French airline. Might have been AOM became that airline.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the only one left. That's intact but derelict, and it looks like it's been used. And I got some images through recently, and on the video version of this we'll pop them up. But that's not looking too good, but it's still intact. No engines. So we know about that. And also the first 74 delivered to Air New Zealand, 200. NZV was the registration. And that's the only one left intact. That's at Domodedovo Airport, I think that's how you say it, in Moscow.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been sitting there since 2011. Last flew for Tranzero, which went belly up. And we talked quite a bit about Tranzero in previous podcasts. I think they went belly up in 2016, owing $600 million. So probably a few parking fees owing on that plane.
Yeah.
So here's what we've done. I went and saw the Brazilian embassy in Wellington, New Zealand, to talk about the DC-8, and they've been very helpful, and they've confirmed that it's still there. I know who owns it. I know sort of how much it owes them, and I know what needs to be done to have it removed from the country and exported back to wherever. Obviously New Zealand is where we want that to go, and I sort of know the ballpark of how much it's going to cost to do that.
All right.
So that's good, and they're being very helpful, and I have great faith in that. In fact, I think that's the one we're going to get, if we're going to get any of them, but anything could happen. The 7-3, that's intact. That's in North Carolina, and I've got a friend in the States working on that. Haven't approached the Cubans. There is a consulate representing the Cuban government in New Zealand, but I'm talking with the Russian embassy in Wellington a week out from this podcast, so a week later from this record date, which I think is the 20th of April.
Yeah.
And of course they have a relationship with the Cubans, you would think, so try and get some advice on that. And then there's Buffalo Airways. Well, that one will keep because we know it's operational. It's a fire bomber, and they use it every now and then. So we're in a crowd-funded situation. The funding campaign starts on the 1st of May, runs through the month of May. Want to raise some money to take some folk around the 5 locations in the world and meet the people and do the deals and try and secure them. The idea is, Martin, is to save them and to either have them stored where they are in the short to medium term, but then get them to somewhere where they can be long-term stored, and one day maybe they could be displayed. So that's the effort going on at the moment.
Preserve for posterity.
Well, I think so. And the way it's being couched, and people get this here, is that we're saying, and I believe this, we're saying, and when I say we, there's a few of us, you've been in Australia, you know that I've been telling you what's been going on, but there's been a few people here helping out have been sort of describing them as modern day equivalents of the Maori ancestral canoes.
Okay.
Because they basically perform the same function.
Yep.
They transported people and a culture across the world. Our people, our culture. And people get that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's worked really well. So that's where we're at. It's been a really incredible journey. Social media is fantastic, by the way.
It is pretty good for that type of thing.
It's been doing video updates and using all the media skills and images, talking to people. The engagement's been great. We've got an engineer on board, Rex, ex-Air New Zealand, who's got a wealth of experience. Got people offering, travel agents offering travel for cost. People offering their services in terms of setting up trusts and incorporated societies for when it gets bigger, because after the first fundraising effort, if all goes well and we get the money in and we go and do these trips and do deals, then we're going to either need to buy them.
Right.
And of course they're junk.
Essentially
junk.
Yeah.
Or have them donated. There'll be a cost there, and then after that, well, dismantling, especially something the size of a DC-10 or a 747, is no small job.
No.
In fact, it's a daunting task in a way, but it's been done many times before.
So the Electra is the only one that's flyable.
Yeah.
So
I can see that being flown back.
Mm-hmm.
Last flight. There's a very slim chance, very slim, that the 747 could be made flyable again. But we don't know until we get over there, have a look,
Yeah.
But as for the others, that's no way, Jose.
No.
The 7.3, DC-8 and DC-10, they're way beyond it.
Okay.
So that's where that is at. We're calling it Bring Our Birds Home.
Okay.
And, I got a good feeling that we'll get some, but we're going for all.
Yeah, as you should.
What did Bernie Sanders say? Go for the whole loaf and get half. Go for half a loaf, get crumbs. We don't want crumbs.
No.
Anyway, so that's been been a very interesting campaign on a whole lot of levels. Obviously, aviation-wise, really into that. But, using... I'm not sure that this is something that could have been done before social media.
Yeah, it would have been a lot harder.
You would have had to have had a lot of money available, been very well connected, to wealthy people, basically, had corporate backing, and, New Zealand, I've got a bit of experience of aviation museums from my travels through the US, and of course we had Bob Bogash on this program right after they reflew this original 727, and I've talked with him a lot over the years. He's an expert in this sort of thing, and there's a lot of backing in bigger countries. So you've got to have the media or the social media projection really to get the crowdfunding possibility working for you. But that's great.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure this could have been done earlier. But isn't it incredible that there are 5 left?
It is.
Because the odds against that are very... We know. These things get ripped apart and melted down.
Yeah, pretty quickly normally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to have the oldest one still airworthy, that's... Whew, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been up to.
Busy.
And it's a work in progress. I'm hoping to be able to announce something re the DC-8 in the not too distant future.
Cool.
That is progressing very well, but I can't say much more than that.
You should be making a documentary as you're going.
I'm filming everything.
Put it up on Netflix.
Filming everything. Every time something happens, I pull out the phone and I film it.
Yeah.
Film myself. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
But I need to have enough content to make up a little trailer. Oh, by the way, I made a promo trailer. I might put it on the end of this podcast. 12,000 views so far.
That's not bad for New Zealand, eh?
It's not bad at all.
No.
So anyway, that's been that. But what have we got happening in the world at the moment, aviation-wise? Where are we at?
The C series is going gangbusters.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah. It looks like the plane to beat at the low end of the market. The A350 is doing remarkably well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wouldn't be surprised to see a few down in this part of the world.
Well, there is talk. I've heard talk. Don't know if it's true or can't confirm anything, but our airline is looking at that plane.
Well, you look at it, it basically matches the current 777s, but it's 50 tons lighter.
How do they do that?
Yeah, that's amazing, isn't it? 50 tons lighter. And I must admit, when I was in Taipei, I never know, is it China Airlines or Air China? I believe it's China Airlines.
China Airlines
is the Taiwanese one.
Yep.
They're flying them.
Yep.
And they're looking very nice with the big flower up on the tail.
Yeah, they got a nice livery.
Yeah, there's quite a few flying around there. Transiting through Hong Kong, I saw my first A320 Neo.
Oh, yeah?
Yep. Getting an engine changed.
Oh.
Yeah. Pratt & Whitney are having engine trouble. Luckily, well, it's not good for Pratt & Whitney because they've got a serious backlog. It's nothing to do with the gearbox. So the gearbox is caused absolutely no problem. The main problem is a seal in the low pressure turbine, and they're having to redesign that.
But that's the sort of thing that can be fixed.
Well, unfortunately for Pratt & Whitney, it seems to be the type of thing they always fix when they roll out a new engine. They just don't seem to be that good at getting new engines to market.
But it's
but for
not
them,
being the gearbox is a big thing.
Huge relief, yeah, because everyone was forecasting, gearbox problems, and that's basically
And
done.
that's the fundamental premise of the engine.
And you see, Rolls-Royce is testing a gearbox up to 130,000 pounds thrust.
Whoa.
Yeah, they've got the test rig, big hydraulic pump, and they've been testing the gearbox on that, and it's also showing no signs of wear.
Okay.
So that's the way Rolls-Royce are going.
Well, it's I guess they're observing very closely how it's working at the smaller scale. That C series, remember that they were struggling with that.
I mean, they still are struggling in terms of orders, but Lufthansa and Swiss Air, well, it's all the same group now. They've said it's exceeding all its contract figures.
It's got a hell of a range too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's doing London City to New York. They've already done a test with a simulated full load. Got off, flew to New York, no problem.
Well, I mean, the economics can't be ignored forever. What's competing against it? Just the regular Boeing 737?
Yeah, the baby Boeings, the baby Airbuses, which aren't selling, and the Embraers. But it's a different class from the Embraer.
Yeah.
And now they're talking of the 500, which would be 140, 150 seater, which is slap bang in sort of the bottom end of A320, 737-8 territory. So if you need, they both take slightly more people, 20, 30 people, but if you don't need the full number of people at a plane, which is much, much more economical, it looks like a pretty good plane.
Yeah, because that Boeing just sort of soldier on with the 737, but those American airlines, they're still buying them in huge numbers. Look at Delta, I think have got over 109s.
They get them very
on
cheap.
Order. Must do, eh?
A lot of people are saying that the new 777s aren't really enough. They basically warmed over existing 777s, and that's not quite fair. I mean, it's a completely new
wing. The
wing
wings
and all
look
of this
different.
Yeah. But now there's this big thing about the middle of the market aircraft, which is basically, if you look at all the paper airplanes that people are coming up with, basically looks like a high-tech version of the 767-200, which is interesting. And some people are even going so far as to say that Boeing will actually base it on the 767-200 because they want to keep that production line going for the next 50 years to supply the USAF with tankers
50
forever and a day.
50 years?
Oh, so they're looking at a new carbon wing and fly-by-wire and this, that and the other, but fundamentally based upon the 767-200 fuselage.
Which is a 1970s design.
Yeah.
But Airbus is sitting there waiting with the A321neo, and that can be upscaled, can't it? Pretty easily,
there's been a lot of talk and some rather plausible looking drawings of a thing called the A322, which is basically an A321, a couple of frames longer, so another 10-15 seats, and a new carbon wing.
Didn't I read somewhere that there are a few airlines looking at doing transatlantic with the long-range version of the A321?
Quite a few airlines are looking at doing that, yeah.
Yeah, so that replaces the 75, basically.
It just takes the 75
Almost.
out of it. Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I see a Jet 2 75 looks like it's been written off.
Oh, yeah?
Had a heavy landing and a tail scrape. They're not worth repairing now. They're so old. It's 29 years old. You forget that they're very old.
And you think, that A321 is going to do the transatlantic trip on about 40% less fuel and pay significantly less landing charges because it's 20 tons lighter.
Yeah. It keeps reoccurring.
Yeah.
Where are they at with that Neo A330?
They're churning.
I've seen some great pictures of it, by the way.
They're not selling in huge numbers, and part of the reason for that is apparently the replacement cycle. Airbus is waiting for the replacement cycle to kick in. They do think that a lot of current A330 owners will go ahead and buy it, especially the Asians for their inter-Asia routes, because you don't need the range of an A350.
Yeah.
But, no matter... If they don't sell that many, every one they sell is a 787-900 which hasn't sold, pretty much.
Ah, okay.
That's the way they're looking at it.
So that sort of cancels the Boeing opportunity out.
Yeah.
Qantas, aren't they launching that Perth to London thing on a 787-9?
They are initially going with a 787-9, and then they want to size it up, and they're looking at either the long-range A350 or the long-range 777.
I heard, getting back to the A350, the long range, I heard that the Air New Zealand interest was Auckland, New York.
Yeah, the interesting thing, or perhaps one of the benefits of the long-range A350, is that it can be long-range or not. It's going to be certified to have all the possible variations, so you'll be able to up-certify it and down-certify it depending on your requirements.
Well, so like dial in what you need.
Dial in what you need. Dial in the center tank, dial out the center tank, dial up the landing takeoff weight, dial it down, da-da-da-da-da.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they've done. They're trying to offer complete flexibility, and they're doing the same thing with the A330s. So you'll be able to buy it in one configuration and paper change it to another configuration and do different missions.
And the 787-10 has flown recently, I think out of Charlotte. Is that where they have their...
I think that was in North Carolina.
Sorry, what am I saying?
Yeah.
Begins with a C.
Yeah.
Not Seattle. I wonder how that went down with the Boeing folk back in Seattle.
Yeah, Boeing sort of seems to be slowly cutting its ties with Seattle, doesn't it? And they've just fired a whole bunch of engineers again.
Oh, okay.
Surplus to requirements.
Really?
Mm.
You'd think that they'd be hard at it right now.
Yeah, you'd think so. You'd think so. Oh, another thing in Perth, I caught up with an old school friend of mine who's the one of the senior technicians with Cobham Aviation.
Oh, yeah.
And they run the Qantas Link 717s, the
great
MD-95s. Man, he loves that thing. He says that's a fantastic aeroplane.
Why did they stop making it?
Oh, because it was taking business away from the small 73s.
But who cares? It's... whatever sells.
Well, it was a different factory, and they didn't want to move the factory from Long Beach. But Ashley says this plane is just fantastic.
So it's about 20 years old now.
Getting up for 20 years old. They got 20 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've got a couple of BAE 146s.
Mm-hmm. They sort of hang in there in places as well.
Unimproved strips for the fly-in, fly-outs. That's what they use them for.
And that's what to mining towns.
Mining strips up in the bush. Yeah. So they got some. I think they got one or two old Avros, and the rest are RJs, the newer models.
Right.
Maintenance hogs, but they like them. Quite popular with the passengers, and they've got an Embraer 190, which I presume they're testing. But the 717, they just say it's fantastic. And Qantas and Virgin are operating Fokker 70s and Fokker 100s. They're all getting a bit old. A lot of technical outages.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, because of the age.
Just because of the age. Just the systems, not the engines and not the flight controls and that, but things like ovens and ventilation and all of this type of thing.
Yeah, annoying.
Yeah, niggles.
Yeah. Okay, so, and they are a Western Australian operation, are they?
I think they're based in Adelaide, but their biggest base is at the moment in Perth.
Yeah. Yeah, those 717s, I've read articles where if you're a 717 airline, they're hard to get hold of because people tend to hang on to them.
People hold on, absolutely. So Cobham's got 20 in Australia. I think Delta's still got like 100.
Well, they bought up a whole bunch.
And they still, anyone who lets them go, Delta buys them. And
what about Hawaiian?
Hawaiian uses them as well.
I think the Qantas ones, or the Cobham one, they are Qantas Link, right?
Pretty much.
They were originally ordered by Impulse Airlines.
Yes, and Cobham's taken them all over.
Yeah, and Qantas never got rid of them.
And they are certified. You can change the settings of the engines. It's basically a switch, or it's a plug. You plug it in, you move it across. 18,500 pounds thrust or 21,200 pounds thrust.
Gosh.
So in winter they do 18.5, and in summer they do the higher thrust rating. No difference in performance when the temperatures are right. It makes no difference.
And it saves the engine wear, I suppose.
Yeah. Cools it down a bit.
That's very cool. I flew on a 717 once. It was AirTran, I think, in the States. And I remember getting up high real quick.
Real quick. I watched them take off. I mean, they're quiet, and they shoot off that runway.
They've got that Rolls-Royce BMW engine, haven't
Yes,
they?
yeah.
Did they go on anything else? Maybe a corporate jet or something?
Gulfstreams. Yeah.
So what are they about? Well, you just put the thrust of it, or 21 max.
21, yeah.
All right, what else? Anything else that we can talk about? What's been happening in the military sort of area?
Well, just the other day I saw a C-27 Spartan parked at Wellington Airport, Australian Air Force.
Right.
Wonder that was doing here.
Now, what do they look like?
Basically a twin engine. It's the old Alenia G222.
Oh, I know the one,
Yeah. It's basically looks like a twin engine Herc.
So were they? I wonder if they're just coming through on a visit, or were showing it off.
Yeah, I wonder, because obviously New Zealand is looking into that type of aircraft, aren't they? It is a bit small. It is a bit small.
You couldn't replace C-130s with that alone.
No, but you know what they could replace it with, Paul?
What?
The C-390, the
KC-390 from Embraer.
Yeah.
Well, that hasn't been gone unnoticed.
No.
When it comes to the Brazilian people.
Yeah.
And a nice fit for New Zealand, because not only is it sort of pretty close to the C-130, but we've got the engine shop down there in Christchurch, and I think it uses the same engine, doesn't it? A320s?
Same engine as a current A320. Yeah.
But
slightly different thrust rating.
Big power.
Yeah.
Sort of the grunty version. So, okay, all right. Well, there have been a few interesting movements come through Welly. Of course, Singapore's through regularly with their...
Although there was some talk about that, isn't there?
ER.
I don't know how well that's going. They were talking it all up, but there was an article in one of the aviation sites going that Singapore is still committed to providing the service, however, and then there was sort of ... whether or not they continue to offer it in quite the same way.
Well, wasn't there a debate on whether it would go daily at some point? Maybe they're holding that off.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've read that they're about 70% out of here, load.
It's not bad.
Yeah, I don't know how they do out of... when they go, Canberra, I don't know how they do out of there to Singapore.
My family flew on it to Europe just before Christmas, and they thought it was great.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it coming in quite often.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't miss it. It's the biggest thing that arrives.
Yeah.
And I've seen it take off too. And boy, it uses hardly any runway.
Yeah.
Like a half, maybe less than half.
I guess it's pretty light to Canberra.
Yeah. So, now the airport extension debate rages.
Yes. Supreme Court now, right?
Yeah, we're caught up in overrun lengths now.
Okay.
For safety. But there's quite a few objections. I think it's around the construction more than the actual lengthening.
Okay.
But I mean, how can you lengthen it if you can't construct it?
I guess you bring it all in by ships.
Well, you could do. What's that airport in the Spanish airport, or
in Madeira?
The Portuguese one. Yeah,
it's on these like 7-story high stilts.
Yeah,
it's just amazing.
Why not?
Yeah, it's just amazing.
They can do it.
Yeah, but when you look at pictures of that construction, that is just incredible.
Yeah, I've seen footage from that airport. Sort of weather conditions are challenging there.
Yeah, well, it's probably like Wellington in the Atlantic.
Yeah. They're quite a long way off the coast, aren't they?
Oh yeah, and that, I mean, a vast amount of that runway is suspended on these really high pillars.
Yeah, I guess otherwise they wouldn't have the room.
No, they don't. It's like Wellington, except they've had to go, because the original runway was on top of a rather high hill. To extend the runway, they basically had to get up to the height of that hill using concrete.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, it's very high.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, the 76s were retired.
Yes. I must have seen one of the last flights to Sydney of that a couple of weeks ago, because I was like, wow, there's a 767, and that must have been the last one on one of its. Yeah, I mean, a week later it was gone.
They arrived in '86. I remember the first one arriving in Wellington. I think it was delivered directly from Seattle to Wellington.
Wow.
And the Prime Minister, I think it was Longy back in the day, he was there. And one of its first missions, or early missions, was to carry the Pope, because the Pope came and visited.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So
I must admit, the addition of winglets to that made it look a lot nicer.
Big winglets.
Yeah.
That's quite a few years. I hear that the 767 and 747-400 simulators have been decommissioned at Air New Zealand in Auckland. Okay. So that's well over.
Yeah, wow, hey?
Yeah. Got a garage that you want to convert?
or a very large warehouse.
I think you had a go on that 747-400 simulator, didn't you?
I did, and it shattered a few illusions.
In
actually.
what way?
Well, I asked the guy, is it really like this to fly? And he says, yeah, no, really, it is a
Well,
simulator.
it has to be, isn't
I know.
it? Yeah.
But I was like, it is so wooden. It was like flying around a building. Impressive, but it was very dead.
I haven't flown a 747 simulator, but or obviously the aircraft, but I've heard pilots comment on it, and they say it's they like flying it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess once you get used to it and can anticipate it and everything, certainly it's going to be challenging, because you're so isolated. It's not like, obviously, it is what it is, but I was quite surprised at how ponderous it was. But there again, it's 300 tons of metal flying around, so it will be ponderous.
But once you get ahead of it, you probably find it's a little more sprightly.
Yes. Once you anticipate it, and that you'll get more out of it.
Mind you, 200 feet, it's like autopilot. So,
well, yes.
So there's not much hand flying, really, is there? I suppose.
Yeah.
But what do you do with a second-hand simulator?
Chuck it.
That's millions of bucks worth.
Yeah, it's got no use. It's worthless.
And to set it up and operate it...
the power requirements. I mean, it's all hydraulics.
Huge,
You get huge hydraulic pumps and electricity and all of this.
So it costs you a bomb.
Because the new ones are all going over to electric actuators.
Yeah.
Linear motors and that in the legs, so they're a lot lighter and a lot simpler.
And not so much power required.
No.
Hate to see the power bill.
Yeah.
All right, well, I mean... We've relaunched ourselves again.
We'll probably go, instead of trying to go weekly, we'll go every 2 weeks, eh?
Yeah, we'll give it a go.
If we can.
You'll be back in Australia, but we can use the technology, Skype and all of that to do that. And there are other platforms available now too, so we'll
see what we can do. Yeah.
Getting that out. And of course, we can use the social media.
Yeah.
So we'll put it up on Facebook, and maybe
I'll catch up with my mate Ash and try and get more info about the 717 and all, maybe some pictures and that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. If people can send in pictures and even footage now, because people have got phones, and it's so easy.
Yeah.
So easy, and all you got to do is do the Dropbox thing, or there's plenty of file transfer services now.
Gmail have just upped their maximum file size. It's quite a lot bigger now.
What is it now?
Oh, I forget, but
it was 20 megs, wasn't it?
It was a lot bigger. It's a lot bigger now.
Oh, is that why I was able to load up a 30 meg file the other day without... I mean, I didn't realize it was that big. I thought, hey, come on.
That's what explains
that. So, and I think we've got a Gmail address, but I've forgotten what it is.
We do. It's
we'll dig that out again.
side@gmail.com.
Okay, so I'll put that up on a graphic here. But okay, well, let's see how we go.
Yep.
Sometimes it's
slowly get back into it.
And as I say, there are other platforms out there, donation platforms as well. So we'll see how we can go with that. But hey, good to see you again.
Yeah.
Good to be back at it.
Good to be back.
And we'll do something again in another couple of weeks, eh?
All right then.
All right. So let's sign it off how we used to. From me, Paul Brennan in Wellington, it's goodbye. And
me, Martin Oakes, also in Wellington this time. Goodbye.